Good morning and welcome to what is our final edition of our FoodBytes Forum series for 2021, wherein we tap industry experts to share their perspectives on pressing, relevant topics within the FoodBytes community. For today's conversation, we will be focusing on the consumer food sector and better understanding how their business strategies have been affected by the last 18 months of the pandemic. Specifically, we'll be diving into some of the consumer behavior changes that we've seen, how to build a more resilient strategy moving forward, what product trialing looks like right now, and so much more. For those of you who are new to FoodBytes, we are an innovation platform connecting corporates and investors in the food and ag industry with the world's most promising startups looking to build a more sustainable food future. We do this through our pitch and pilot programs, and we can't wait to publicly announce the 45 startups selected for this year's pitch program. So make sure you stay tuned on September 8th for that public announcement. And if you're a corporate or investor who is innovation curious, our team is already talking 2022. So make sure to drop us a line at foodbytes@rabobank.com to learn how we can bring innovation to your business's bottom line. Back to the conversation at hand. Today, our discussion will be moderated by Global Head of F&A Innovation here at Rabobank, Anne Grevin, and she is joined by FoodBytes pitch member Brian Kresge of Hormel, FoodBytes pitch alumni Kayla Castaneda of Agua Bonita, and one of our consumer foods analysts here at Rabobank, JP Frossard. Finally, a quick housekeeping note for all of you in the audience. As always, your mic and camera are muted throughout today's session. However, if you have questions for our panelists, you can submit them on the right-hand side in the chat function, and we will address them in the final 20 minutes of today's segment, which is dedicated to our audience Q&A. In addition to that, we will have some polling questions popping up throughout the discussion, and we hope you participate so we can have a really engaging conversation. With that, Anne, I will hand it off to you to kick off today's discussion.
Thanks, Jillian, and thank you all for joining us for our last FoodBytes Forum of this year. It's going to be a good one, and we really appreciate you all taking the time to join us. There's still a lot of programming to come this year with FoodBytes. We have our pitch event, our public pitch event, which will be November 10th. Prior to that, we'll have our member-only event, October 11th and 15th. So definitely think about joining us as a member next year so you can be a part of that programming. And don't forget, membership is going to be open right now. We already have plans for 2022, and we invite you all to be a part of it. We really do have an amazing group of panelists, whether it's coming from us, from our own research team with JP, Brian from Hormel, and Kayla, who is a startup alum. These guys have all soldiered through what has been an unprecedented year and actually have been able to be very nimble, very innovative, and have built some amazing new ways and new tools of navigating what I believe will be a new way that the consumer engages, purchases, and thinks about food. We're going to open up the discussion, as Jillian said, in really thinking about how we can engage you all, the audience, more. So we're going to have some questions for you, and we really hope that you will engage with us because I think that will make it much more interesting for all of us on the panel here to hear, to get feedback from you. We need that, trust me. But also, we want to make sure that this is answering the questions you have. So we have a few planned questions that we'll be sprinkling throughout the panel discussion. But even as you have questions, pop them in the chat. Jillian is going to help us navigate that this morning. So we'll be hopefully be able to be as responsive as need be. When I wanted to kick it off with one of the questions JP had been thinking about, really as he's been watching how the consumer has been changing what they do, how they do it, how they eat, where they eat, what they think about eating. And his question really revolved around something near and dear to my heart, is what appliances could you not have lived without during the pandemic? We're going to pop that in the chat. And before we kick off, we'd love to get your answers. I can say for me, I think we give you the option of microwave, oven, or believe it or not, food delivery apps. I can tell you that my number one thing was the microwave because I was always needing to go somewhere, get on another call, I felt like my schedule, I don't know about you, became more busy working from home, not less. So microwave would definitely be my answer, but I'd love to hear what the audience has to say, Jillian.
We are still waiting to collect some responses here. I've seen one so far. And let's see.
Maybe we'll circle with some of the answers, and we'll go to you, JP, first to really talk about how the consumer really rapidly changed to think about getting food into the home. What did they need? How were they eating? And how did the behavior change from prior to pandemic, during the pandemic?
Thank you, and thank you for having me here. Yes, here in the Rubber Research team in the past 18 months, we have spent a lot of time doing research to understand this developing story from a consumer perspective. Much has been said already, much has been read in the news about working parents cooking lunch from home, family breakfast. It's back again. Kids are homeschooling, and the parents are spending more time with the kids, and all that translate into food and eating occasions. And we also trying to relieve our stress by baking cakes in the middle of the afternoon. I tried to do that a few times. So yes, food became the most evident aspect in my view for the stay-at-home times, and that translated into a surge in sales for products such as pasta, frozen pizza, ice cream that kept us running, and also for most provided safety and comfort, which are two much needed aspects during any crisis. And the reason for this question is that we not only bought food, we bought a lot of, we invested money in several kitchen cooking equipment, and they will remain in our cabinets for long. Even if we go back to restaurants, if we go back to the offices and kids back to school, we're going to still keep their products at home. So as seen the microwaves a few decades ago, we may see new launches. Like, for instance, we can also add to this list the air fryer, right? I bought one. So this all can translate into a new way people source their foods and what they buy their foods, and ultimately can create new categories available. The consumer is back to the frozen aisle again. They usually before try to go to the fresh products, walking around the stores, and now they are going to hoarding products for the pantries, but also for their freezers because it's fresher. And so that's open room. The fact that consumers are back to the frozen aisle opens the possibility to a lot of innovation in this category. Looking forward to hear the results.
Well, I guess that speaks to my in the microwave is the frozen category. Go ahead, Jillian. We have some good ones. Not what we would have expected, though.
I was going to say, surprisingly, it looks like 55% of our audience is using their oven the most, followed by 33% on food delivery app and 11% on microwave. And I did see wine fridge in the chat function as well.
Yeah, I found myself the oven the most convenient way because it just turn it on and leave like vegetables, meat, whatever there. Even some ready to eat food, like you don't need to be around the stove. You can 30 minutes cold. All you need to leave it in the oven. So, but good. I'm not alone.
I saw wine, but I also saw bread maker. I know a lot of people dusted off their old bread makers and decided to become home bakers again. So that is an old item that has grown in resurgence. But really interesting, and thinking about how people bought their food over the last 18 months, where they bought it, what they bought, and Rylan and Kayla, I'd love to know from you guys how you saw this happening. Maybe quickly, I don't know, Brian, you want to talk about how you addressed this at Hormel, how you thought about this, and some of the changes. You shared a lot of it with us on our pre-call, and I think there's some interesting stuff happening at Hormel that I'd love to hear more about.
Yeah, I mean, to JP's point, we did see a lot of short-term shifts. I mean, clearly our center store portfolio accelerated based off of the benefits that it provided, while with everything being locked down, our food service business certainly felt the impact of that. But I mean, as we start to come out of it, out of the pandemic, what I would say is I think we're seeing a lot. What the pandemic did is accelerate a lot of the trends that we were seeing beforehand. I think, you're certainly food is part of your holistic health, or food is medicine. That was certainly a trend going into the pandemic. I think people are becoming even more conscious about that now. Certainly snacking changed a lot during the pandemic because you didn't have as much mobile snacking, clearly. But we're seeing those behaviors bounce back. And certainly, we projected that going in. I mean, clearly we believe that snacking throughout the day, we saw snacking occasions increasing. They continue to increase. And that was really part of the thesis behind our Planters acquisition. Even when I look at food service right now, we certainly saw a shift to takeout business during that time frame. Now, as things start to open up, we see a broad-based recovery within that division. And then, an area that I focus on with alternative proteins, people were showing an increasing curiosity about alternative protein, before the pandemic, and I see that even accelerating right now. So I think you definitely saw some short-term shifts, but I also think people are bouncing back, and you're just seeing an acceleration of existing trends coming out of the pandemic.
Do you think, because you mentioned it, and I know it's a little off the beaten path a little bit, but do you think that the explosion in the plant-based was due to the desire for healthier food options? Was it food curious, or was it just trying to create variety? I mean, it's really interesting to sort of pinpoint what's driving the change. I don't know that there's one answer, but I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts off, and I'll take a step back and I say, I think it depends on where you're at in your life. I think there is definitely a lot of curiosity, plant curiosity, if you will, that's out there right now to try these new generation of items that mimic meat, because a lot of people still have traditional protein in their diet. I think health's a part of it. I think for younger generations, it's definitely the environment. I mean, I'll never forget 2 years ago working on this Happy Little Plants project and taking a vacation when I got a break up to the Boundary Waters in far northern Minnesota, right on the Canadian border. And we go to like the last city before you go up the Gunflint Trail, right? And you're in the middle of nowhere, right? And just beautiful lakes and forests. And we went to this restaurant, and my niece and nephew were there, and Beyond Meat was on the menu, and they both ordered it, and they just proceeded to give me a lecture on, why wouldn't you eat plant-based protein? They got it, like, tastes the same, better for the environment, right? They weren't talking about health at that phase. So I think it's a combination just based off of where you're at in life.
Yeah, so generational, I think it's interesting. One of the things that people are definitely looking for at home was trying new items and having something that wasn't maybe the status quo. And that's really what, Kayla, you were offering with Agua Bonita. Tell me a little bit about how that evolved. You launched a product during COVID, which is, amazing. It's an amazing product. So anybody who hasn't tried it needs to try it. But tell us a little bit about that journey and how you successfully launched.
Yeah, it's funny that people are talking about their air fryer or using like a food delivery app as being two of the highest things that got used during the pandemic, because I think the two aspects that really drive that, I know I was using my air fryer and my Instant Pot and just trying to come up with new things to put in it every day because I was curious. And then also like the convenience of just having something delivered, obviously during a pandemic, not wanting to go to the store. But, you know, I was adding stuff to my cart that I wouldn't have necessarily added to my cart if I was actually in the store. And I think those two aspects of convenience and curiosity really worked in our favor to launch a brand during the pandemic because we were mostly direct to consumer and we are the first healthy, ready to drink agua fresca. So for some people, they're already familiar with the concept, but some people are not. But it was a great time for them to kind of explore new things and, you know, shake up the routine that they had already come to establish and really welcome us into their homes. Yeah, so it was a crazy time to launch a brand, that's for sure. But honestly, looking back, I couldn't have asked for a better time to launch a brand just because we had all of that working in our favor. And I think that even now, as we start to expand and even move into retail, some of that culinary curiosity is still there. And you know, you're starting to see it, especially in the beverage set with a lot of these like new age beverages that are really not defined by anything that's on the market coming to fruition.
For those who don't know, agua fresca is a fruit forward water beverage, but it's really designed off of a very traditional beverage that I think typically has a lot of added sugar, but yours is really fruit forward and very fresh. And it tastes super fresh coming out of a can, which I think is the unexpected aspect of this product, which makes it so desirable. Is that a fair characterization, Kayla?
Yeah, we definitely try. So fresca means fresh in Spanish. So yeah, we definitely try, but traditionally, yeah, they're made with fresh fruit, non-sparkling water, and a lot of added sugar, upwards of like 79 grams. So for us, we don't use any added sugar. We just use 100% real fruit, non-sparkling water, and then sometimes spices to get really culturally aligned and nostalgic flavors. So it's been fun.
Brian, did you guys deploy or really think about creating new ways of thinking about your own R&D and how you were innovating some of the food offerings? I know you mentioned that you made some acquisitions really to sort of fill that ready to go, really grab and go, easy snack space. But I know that you were sharing a bit about how you were thinking about design and product development. Part of what you do is that, but also you look to work with startups as well. So if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely going through last year put a lot of stress on our system, right? A company of our size. So there was certainly a focus on keeping the core operation going, right? And a lot of R&D support went there. At the same time, I think what that focus caused us to do is we knew that, you know, the resources were limited. So we had to make choices on bets and what we were going to place priorities against. And just specifically when it, you know, comes to alternative proteins, you know, we had started up a business in 2019, an experiment to learn the alternative protein space, concluded right around springtime last year. Didn't meet our expectations, but we gained a ton of learnings, and that really set the foundation of us figuring out our strategy in the space. And so what we did is we translated that to where we were going to focus on from a product development perspective. And, you know, when you look at our company and our business, something that's in the DNA of Hormel Foods, that was one of the original products that George Hormel created, you know, 130 years ago, was dry sausage, things like pepperoni, really important to our company. So we said, all right, we've got a new product concept that we're working on, an alternative protein, a plant-based pepperoni. Let's go all in on this thing and get it right and win in a space that's important for our company. And we did. We maybe had to filter out some other projects that held promise, but we locked in on that. And I mean, from an internal development perspective, thousands of hours. I think we're on the 76th iteration of it right now. We're bringing it to National Pizza Expo next week, the second generation of the product for launch, and we think there's a lot of potential on that. I think we also saw that to do it ourselves in an emerging space that we are building experience and capability in takes a lot of effort. So what it's also doing is it's opening up our aperture to look at partners, emerging companies, startups, entrepreneurs, in these, what I would say, the generation 2, 3, and 4 in alternative proteins, to engage those companies and leverage the work that they're doing and partner with us to find ways to collaborate and kind of speed up our R&D efforts, because there's just some stuff that we don't have the experience or capability to do. And I spend a lot of time on that.
And
I know.
I have
Yeah,
two.
go ahead. Yeah.
No, I
Go
have
ahead,
two
JP.
comments on the. I have two comments here on the curiosity we are talking. There was curiosity for new products, but there was curiosity as well for the products that we have always bought. And one of the reasons that may behind is definitely behind the increasing interest for plant-based food is also the knowledge about some flaws in the animal protein chain that became very evident during the pandemic. So the consumers also say, okay, I'm reading in the newspaper as well why the reasons why I cannot find the specific cut of meat in the supermarket today, and start learning more and more, and say, okay, it's time for us to go for something different, at least occasionally. This is one point, but another point is that in the beginning you got very, very concerned about the economic impact of the pandemic, namely the effects on purchasing power. After all, we came from the lowest unemployment level in 15 years in February 2020 to the record higher in April, only 2 months after. So it was like more than expected to see the consumer getting very conscious on their spending, going for value brands and private label. But you saw the opposite happening, an increased interest for known brands and also premium products. An explanation can be found to the fact that the recession was felt very unequally among different segments. White collars, they kept their jobs and they have discretionary income by not eating at restaurants, by not traveling. And also to the fact that we didn't want to spend much time touching products and exploring labels at the supermarket. So we go for the same good old. We were also cooking ourselves, so we got much more cautious on the quality of the product we're bringing. If I'm going to spend all that time baking my own sourdough bread, I will spend a bit more and have the best flour, the organic flour from South Italy. This adds to the story I'm trying to tell by baking my own bread, and this led to a massive trade-up effect. So it was a good moment to add value to clients, and with better tasting under nice brands, easy to prepare, and also healthier if possible, right? Because after all, we were in a health crisis, and everything that helped boost immunity, for instance, gained a lot of attention from the consumer.
Thank you, JB. That's actually very insightful, and I appreciate those thoughts. And it does help build that bigger picture of what was going on at the same time and how the consumer was reacting to it. I know one of the things I'm getting ready to ask the audience another question, but I want to tell a little bit of a story, because the way I used to trial new things, and I want to be totally honest, is I love going to the farmer's market because they always had these amazing samples. And I assure you that 90% of the time I would buy something because I tried it there. But even in, Costco, I have to admit, when I would go to Costco, I would discover something I probably wouldn't have ever bought if I hadn't trialed it. All of that stopped. And so I did make many single purchases just to keep things interesting at home that as Kayla and you just pointed out. So I'd love to hear from the audience, how were you sampling new products during this time? And what are some of those strategies or ways that you were trialing things as consumers that you believe you're going to continue? there should be a question popped up on Swap Card, and love to get your answers. But while we're waiting for you all to respond, I'm going to ask, Brian and Kayla to really think about, how did you push your products through the channels to get awareness at a time where it was very challenging, and what are those techniques or tactics that you will continue to use going forward, given that we will probably continue to have this hybrid purchase model from the consumer? Love to hear from you, and maybe we'll start with you, Kayla, because you built your whole brand in a direct to consumer, which prior to the pandemic wasn't easy to do, to get that awareness.
Yeah, I think JP touched on this a bit about like this education piece, because one really cool aspect to Agua Bonita is that we use upcycled produce. So food that is either produced in surplus or doesn't make it to the grocery shelves for like cosmetic inferiorities, like 30% of the nation's produce ends up going straight to landfill. And when the pandemic hit, I think that there was a new light shown on the supply chain and how our groceries and produce were actually getting to the store. And that was a really great educational moment for us to tell our consumers, like, hey, actually, like, if you think that that's a problem, it is. And you should buy our product because we are actively working on reducing these instances and combating food waste. And, food insecurity became such a hot topic in the midst of the pandemic. So I think those education pieces really helped drive trial for us, because folks wanted to feel like they were doing their part to help out and feel like they were contributing to combating something that they, saw for the first time for a lot of people was a real big issue. So doing that, and then also really just offering things in like smaller packs. So even though aguas frescas are the most popular drink in Latin America and they're up in popularity almost 200% in the States, there's still a lot of folks that are just trying to get introduced to the concept. So instead of, making you buy like 48 cans at a time or something like that, which a lot of like direct to consumer brands tend to kind of go heavy on their pack sizes, we reduced our pack sizes to make sure that people could try our product and not have so much risk tied to that first instance. And then, we had to get really creative with the way that we found consumers and that they were able to trial. So another big thing during the pandemic was direct to home grocery boxes, because everyone is cooking more in their house, doesn't want to go to the store as much. And so we saw that as an opportunity to throw a can or two of Agua Bonita into those kinds of boxes and let people trial that way. Because, there really is no true replacement for getting to try a drink, firsthand. So getting a can in their hand was just our ultimate goal, whether that was like 1 can or 4 cans. And it gave us an opportunity to also, test different markets and see where our drink resonated with the best. And all of that data is stuff that we are always implementing and, moving forward, just kind of making decisions based on those learnings.
Ryan, did you guys deploy any new tactics? I mean, you really are primarily distributed through the traditional retail channels. Did you build many? What we were hearing, right, JP, is a lot of guys were looking at the direct to consumer as this new funnel. We saw, P&G announce something and brands like that, but curious to know what Hormel was doing. And then maybe JP, you can speak more holistically about strategies and tactics that evolved and how we expect them to stick around.
Yeah, I think on the Hormel side, I mean, we did do some experimenting with direct to consumer. I know in our core business, our Columbus brand established a site for entertaining charcuterie, some premium charcuterie trays that could go directly to consumer. our core business, we relied on a lot of the past tactics that we use to generate trial. Maybe some ones that had maybe fallen out a little bit of favor in the past, but because our options were reduced, we had to change. So sometimes something as tactical as an IRC just to break through at shelf. When I think about alternative protein, one of the learnings from our experiment is a good vehicle to build just penetration for the entire space and to encourage trial is through the food service channel. It's just a lower friction way to get people to try. You're not making as big of an investment. I think our initial hypothesis was, let's go build this business in retail and then get food service to come along. And our key learning from our initial experiment is, well, maybe we need to go the other way. Let's build adoption in food service. Let's try to hopefully build our brand in food service and then go out to retail. So for us, we're really trying to take a company-wide approach in this space, which is something that's a little bit different.
Well, focusing a little bit here on.
Go ahead, JP. Sorry.
Now look at where the consumer source their food, right? I'll use this opportunity to promote a report that I published last month. I'm glad to share this after. We tracked the spending of consumers' credit card spending throughout the pandemic in different retail categories. And yes, of course, online grocery was the retail category that grew the most. But our main finding here, it was not this, it's not new. It was the fact that discounter shoppers were the ones that have joined online the most. In April 2021, 24% of the consumers that shopped at any discounter store, they're known for lower prices, they also shopped online. This number was only 11%, and this 24% was much higher than consumers from premium stores like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and Wegmans. So this growth is a result of initiatives to make online groceries affordable. For instance, free delivery, free curbside pickup, and also the acceptance of food stamps by Instacart and other services that have always been seen as a premium, as a convenient tool for groceries. And shopping online became a safety store as well, not only a conveniency one. So a lot to be explored there as well, with all segments of products.
And it made, with the adoption of different payment methods, it made online shopping much more accessible than it had been prior to the pandemic. So that's where we see the stickiness, hopefully going forward, because I do think that the more channels will allow different buying behaviors, but also different patterns and different demands of the consumer that can be filled. And for innovators, those might be the best ways to trial going forward. We'll have to see, right? I know that one of the big principal concepts of why we do FoodBytes and encourage membership is because we really are all about building this collaborative model in thinking about how we can all come together to support change and innovation in the food system. And one of the questions Brian wants to put to the audience is really to hear from you as companies, you as innovators, you as investors, or what and how are you working together to support innovation within your businesses? What has been working for you, and maybe what are your challenges? So that's kind of 3 questions in one. I know it's going to take some time, but please pop your answers in, because I think this is really crucial as we are collectively building the future food companies. While they may be mature today, like Hormel, what is Hormel going to look like in 10 years? What does Agua Bonita look like in 10 years? Is it part of someone else? And, the investors who actually make all these companies happen, they want to know too. So it'd be great to hear. And maybe Kayla, I'll go to you first to speak about, what have you learned? And as you think about Agua Bonita in 10 years, or let's say 5 years, what is that going to look like? How do you hope to evolve your business? And I know you're you're just quite a year. So 10 years might be long, but I'm sure that you have a vision of how it's going to grow and evolve. And I'd love to hear it if you're willing to share.
Oh yeah, I think every entrepreneur has that big vision. I think that's why you become an entrepreneur, is because you have these big visions. But yeah, for us, collaboration, that spirit of collaboration is really like baked into the DNA of Agua Bonita, from everything, even from how we R&D things sometimes and change flavors. Like one of our SKUs started off as coconut lime, and then it ended up as like pineapple cucumber. And that was by listening to our customers and crowdsourcing different options, and really working collaboratively with the people that support us the most. And that spirit of collaboration extends into everything that we do, because as a startup, yeah, you don't have unlimited resources at your fingertips. The checkbook is not as deep as a lot of more established brands and companies. So we lean into partnerships all the time, to make the next stage possible. So we've just gone into some really great partnerships with like Pernod Ricard and Kroger and their Zero Hunger, Zero Waste cohort, and LA Libations, and all of these folks, even though they have different focuses, add something really special to Agua Bonita in terms of like maybe it's distribution, or maybe it's a new point of sale, or maybe it's a new way of thinking about our retail strategy, that allows us to even dream about the future. So as we evolve, hopefully in 10 years from now, Agua Bonita is not just a line of healthy aguas frescas. Hopefully we are the overarching brand of better for you Hispanic beverages. There's a lot of different routes that we could go with line extensions, and yeah, just other brands under us, possibly, that would authentically fit under our umbrella. So I would hope that 10 years from now, you would see more than just Agua Bonita Aguas Frescas. You'll see a whole Bonita familia of brands. So that's our goal. But partnerships make that possible for us at this point.
Right. Brian, how about you? How are you working towards partnerships and thinking about the evolution? I know you gave us a few really great examples. So, and what do you got? What is Hormel going to be doing in 10 years?
Yeah. If I had that crystal ball, I might be in a different spot. But I can tell you that partnerships are key for us. I mean, if take a step back, I think when I joined Hormel, we were maybe a $3-4 billion company. Today, we're an $11 billion global food company that's in a lot of diverse spaces. It's imperative that we keep exploring. Our ambition is to become this uncommon and innovative global food company, and I think we're humble enough to understand that we need to evaluate the landscape of emerging companies to help us move forward, and to get ideas. I mean, ultimately, when you've been around like us for 130 years, it's certainly staying relevant with where the consumer's at today, but it's also about where the consumer is going in the future and having that longer term mindset. And I can tell you from my perspective that's my job right now. I mean, it is really investing in building partnerships with emerging food companies. As I think about yesterday, that was my entire day. Whether it's looking at exploring new novel ingredients in the alternative protein space, stuff that we couldn't do on our own, and evaluating opportunities, down to smaller tactical collaborations. I think you guys, Please Cheese, which was a FoodBytes alum, we're actually working with them next week at the upcoming Pizza Expo. We've got a plant-based topping portfolio. They have plant-based cheese. We think it's good to give operators a choice and help them understand where the market's going. So that's a tactical example. As I step back, I think one of the parts of my role is it's just not about, when I say investing in partnerships, it's not just about cutting checks. That's easy. But that doesn't help advance things. It's about finding those connections within our organization to leverage that new technology, right, and bring it to market. Otherwise, it can just be hard for smaller companies to navigate a company as complex as us. And I think that is part of at least my investment into working with these emerging food companies is helping them build those connections.
Great. And we love that you're working with one of our alumni, please. And maybe we'll have a peanut aqua fresca combination at some point. Throwing it out there. Yeah. But all of you can definitely enjoy that. But what do you see, JP? I know you sit in a fortunate position in our research team. You're talking to a number of our clients, which are large food companies. Is this in line with what you're hearing and what you're seeing, at least in how it's playing out as well?
Yeah, yes, and 18 months ago, we are all asking ourselves the same questions. We never spent so much time on the phone because everybody had so many questions, nobody had answers, but we're trying to develop on this together. One thing that I talking about partnership also talks about reaching out to someone that's different than you or can offer something you cannot have, right? Exchange this kind of knowledge. And to that point, I think it's important for us to mention here that 2020 there was another thing happening in 2020, right? We had the emergence of the popular movement for social and racial justice that took the headlines, took the streets. In here, the US took the shape as the Black Lives Matter movement, and the companies were pushed to take a stand. They were publicly affirming their support in CEO letters, very emotional letters to employees, shareholders, and consumers. But they are also pushed to take action and revisiting some practice and also in some cases even phasing out some iconic brands that they have no room in the present times, right? So the consumer knows the company has the ways to drive change, and this is also important for the companies to show the consumers that they have the politician ears, that they employ people, that they train people, and they spend money, they procure goods. So if you're going for partnerships, also do that. Include the promoting diverse in your place, promoting diverse in your procurement chain as much as you can, because the consumer expects you that. And following with that, we also seeing the same thing for the carbon emissions reductions, and also all the efforts to revert climate change, to reduce plastic use. This requires a lot of innovation and a lot of partnerships.
Thanks, JP. That's one of the big topics I wanna focus on again. Climate and how that'll impact product development, and as we think about delivering our food to the consumer. But before we go to that question, I think you also touched on, what are the cultural movements occurring that also drive consumer behavioral change, and also as that relates to what we're eating. And as you said, the Black Lives Matter movement was a big one. But I suspect that the consumer is fueled by many movements, whether it's going to be climate, it's going to be Black Lives Matter, whether we talk about, saving the planet, and, plant-based is sort of become its own movement. How do we think about what's coming next and how we prepare for that? These are challenging questions, and where do we sort of look to get that insight? And if Brian or Kayla, you have insights there. I know we spoke about a number of ways of thinking about the global arena and how that helps your own decision making. Maybe Brian, I'll start with you to answer. How do you look at what are the future, I would say, cultural and I would say political and climate issues that are going to maybe have an impact on how you think about innovating your products for the future?
Yeah.
Not
Well,
an
it's a
easy one.
complex view. Yeah, it's a complex view. And we certainly have to consider all of our stakeholders. Clearly, our consumers are really important, but also our employees are over 20,000 employees. They're really the foundation of this company. And, you know, um, clearly what happened last year with the murder of George Floyd, that really hit hard for our company being based in Minnesota. And our employees were hurt. And I remember our CEO having a town hall and us discussing and trying to figure out what can we do, because we wanted to do more than just take a public stand on it. We wanted to do something about it. I think that's just inherent in our culture. And we also tried to figure out how do we do it in a way that still adheres to our corporate philanthropy goals around education and hunger. So we really leaned into our employees to give us ideas on how we could make a difference in this movement. And then the other thing that we did, and so we donated to some organizations like the United Negro College Fund that clearly aligns with education. There was also some farming groups who were trying to cultivate farmers from the African American community. But I think the biggest thing that we did is we accelerated a pilot program that we had in Austin, Minnesota, and we expanded it everywhere because we really do believe that education can help bring about structural change. So for our employees, we announced that any of their dependents have access to a free 2-year college degree. So that's where we started, and we talked about it, typical Minnesota style. We didn't brag about it too much, but I thought that was important for us, and we started, I guess, with our own house, and then we talked to our other stakeholders about it.
Oh, thank you. Those are great initiatives. How about you, Kayla?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say that there's any particular way that it influences our innovation, because I would say it's tied into the fiber of our existence. We launched in the midst of that. Like, I identify as Afro Latina. It Agua Bonita existing is our political stance. Agua Bonita existing is our eco stance. We made these choices deliberately. Like, I mean, we're in cans. We're not carbonated. That's much harder to do than it sounds. We took a very bold approach to our brand design and wanted something that was a direct cultural reflection of ourselves on shelves. So that was a very deliberate choice. And we don't shy away from talking about how our stories as individuals and our culture has influenced not just our life, but our business choices and the way that we are priced, what we're priced, and want to be approachable and affordable and accessible. And so, yeah, so I don't know if there's really any deviation as to like how these things influence our innovation, because they are just a part of why we exist in the first place.
Okay, great. Um, and I would agree with all that. You're on trend with all the most important topics that will probably be remain important for the years to come because of their relevance. So that's being a year-old company. You built it to meet the needs. So great. We are coming up on our last audience question. We did not have a lot of results that I could see, but I'm having a little bit of delay. But this one is actually, I'm going to ask the question, then I'm going to go right to JP, because it's really about, what are the eating habits that you believe have now become your new eating habits that you developed during the pandemic? So what eating habits has stuck with you through the pandemic? Is snacking still going to be your thing, even when you're not, working from home? How you snack? Are you going to still cook at home the way you have been, or continue to make that bread in the bread mill, or are you, what other type of things have you adopted that you will likely continue? And with that, maybe JP, you can speak to, we spoke quite a bit on our pre-call around all of our new behavior and how that shaped things, but what is the sort of look forward from your lens?
No, we like to say that the longer you're exposed to a new habit, the more likely it's going to stick. And we are 18 months into that, and unfortunately, with the upticks, we're likely not going back to our normal life again. So working from home is something that's here to stay. Doesn't mean we don't go never to the office, but every day we don't go to the office, it's higher need for you to go to the supermarket and cook your own food or have food delivery, you name it. So I think this is here to stay. We're going to eat more at home, and when we eat at home, we pay more attention to the source of the ingredients. We have some savings. We can spend more. So I think there's a continuation on premium products. It's here to stay. We're gonna find ways to cook, but doesn't mean that we're gonna make a nice dish from scratch. We need to I used my oven example, right? I buy carrots. I learned that if I slice what veggies I have in the oven and put in the fridge, put in the oven from olive oil, I already have like my vegetables. It's healthy. It's very easy to make. It's super affordable. So I pair that with some frozen meat or plant meat alternative that also goes in the oven at the same time and takes 30 minutes. It's time to have like one quick Zoom call, right? So I think it's definitely here to stay. Snacking have changed. We don't eat that much cereal bars as before, and there was one of the few packet categories that dropped. But on the other hand, I'm having nuts all afternoon long. That's great for planters, and yes, yeah, and as well. So and I'm mostly focused on bakery, and we have seen, of course, cakes, cupcakes, which is celebratory item. They have dropped during the pandemic. We don't have much reasons to celebrate, or they even became like smaller cakes, much more premium cakes, but smaller. That's another question we can explore. But we've seen a lot of baked snacks. We are doing no, we can do our own muffins in the middle of the afternoon and have like better options. So I think the future is like we need to associate like taste, convenience, and also the better for you. It's challenging, right? But that's what the consumer wants, and if you can check all the three boxes, definitely you have a room in this new world.
We do have some results from our last question. Jillian, do you want to share those before we have before I ask any other questions?
Yes, definitely. So our final results are in. 25% are still snacking and 75% are still cooking at home. So I think we're seeing quite a big jump there on the cooking from home. And something I said too is I'm also trying to figure out how to safely support my local restaurants. So that's kind of my hybrid approach. And I have one other from the audience, which is homemade dinner became and still remains the main meal of the day and time to reconnect with family.
Right. I'm going to ask both Brian and Kayla if they had anything else to add in terms of what they're seeing, but also if not, I have one final question. I think you guys kind of answered some of this in your other discussion points, but I do want to open it up.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would add probably is I have two little ones in the home. So having the time to cook more things at home, I think, has opened up just the possibilities of like what we introduced to them. I'm not sure if we would have introduced them to so many different kinds of things had we not had so much time to make more things at home.
Anything else, Brian?
No, I think JP and Kayla did a great job.
Yeah. So one of my, I don't know if we have any audience questions, but I do have one other question that I'd love to ask, especially given this week we, all the scientists came together and they did publish the new report around climate change. I think the Wall Street Journal was pretty sensational in saying that, we're in code red here and we really need to act if we're going to take a stance on reducing the effects of climate change. And while the big focus was around the burning of fossil fuels, we all know, because we're in the food space, that there's also been a lot of pressure on us around, how do we as food producers reduce our own carbon footprint? And so if I were to ask, what is the one thing that will become a primary concern as you are thinking about innovating your businesses going forward? What is that one thing? And it doesn't, there's a lot of things, but if you were to point on one that can have the biggest impact, I'd love to hear your respective thoughts. And then JP, for you, really thinking about what have you been hearing, the actions that some of our large clients are taking would be great. So maybe I'll start with you, Kayla, because I think a lot of what you do already is about carbon reduction. But if there's one thing more you can do, it'd be great to hear what that might be.
Yeah, I was going to say for us, it really is just about saving as much produce as we possibly can, but also like urging other folks to adopt the practice as well. Some people, when they approach us and talk to us about our brand, they're like, oh, that's great. We're so glad that you're doing that. That makes you special. But in earnest, we don't want to be special for doing that. We want as many other people doing that as possible, because the more people that can hop on board, the better. So we don't want to be one of few doing it. We want to be one of many doing it and showing that you can do it in a viable way without, harming your bottom line or anything like that. So I think, yeah, for us, it's just setting an example that this can be done and hoping that others and urging that others to adopt the practice as well.
One of our other startups from the FoodBytes alum is a company named Toast Ale, and their whole premise was we've created this recipe to use bread to make beer. It's open to everybody, so it's a same concept. You're setting an example, but you want it to be the model that others adopt. So that's really great to hear. Brian, what about Hormel? What do you think there will number one?
Well,
strategy?
A little bit outside of my wheelhouse, so I don't know what the exact number one is. I think it's going to be all of the above. Inherent, and I think our company's DNA and how we operate is conserving the resources that we use. I think there's probably ways within our supply chain to get more efficient. I think the running of our facilities, we continue to find ways to utilize renewable energy through the Planters acquisition. That corn nuts facility is 100% renewable energy through a partnership with Tesla. What can we learn from that, apply to our others? And I think to our earlier conversation, partnerships, right? As we explore new spaces, there's a lot of companies out there, to Kayla's point, that are focusing on upcycling. How can we be part of that with some of our food waste streams? So there's a lot of different ideas that are definitely, or options that are out there, and we just got to keep ticking down the list.
Great. JP, anything more to add? We're coming up on our time, so I want to make sure.
No. Briefly, from a consumer perspective, I think it's up to the consumer as well to do his or her part, contribute to that, make some sort of sacrifice. I was talking to the CEO of a startup, plant-based startup, and I say, yes, but what about how can you for taste? How the consumers still see some difference in some cases? And he said to me, yes, but meanwhile, like, you need to do some sacrifice as well. So it's like, I think more and more the consumer shouldn't expect to have a product that's going to be exactly the same. He will eventually have that. Technology changes so fast, but meanwhile, it's also up to him to for her to go back to meet in the middle and say like, okay, I will do that. Like instead of taking an Uber, I'm gonna take a bike. It just kind of like little changes. Like I think it's expected for consumer as well. I talk a lot with my European peers, and I think in Europe, probably especially the youngers, culturally speaking, they are much more advanced than that. But I think that here in America, you need to be more conscious on our footprint.
Yeah. Well, thank you, JP, for concluding. Totally agree. So I think basically we're learning it's all up to all of us as consumers, whether we have roles in companies, whether we're building companies like Brian and Kayla and JP and I, and about communicating and sharing what we learned with all of you. I want to thank you all for joining us. I can't thank you guys, the panelists enough. You've been so open and honest in how you've shared your views, your perspectives, and really glad that you are a part of helping build the future of food with us as your partner. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you again soon.